Does self-care feel selfish to you? If you're like many people, you worry that taking time for yourself leaves less time for you to care for others. You may also feel that it's not possible to take time for self-care and keep up with the demands of your busy role. This week, I talked with John Chilkotowsky, an executive coach and former executive leader, about the importance of putting ourselves first. John shares his story of how a panic attack led him to rethink his approach to work and the advice he has for others who may be neglecting their own self-care. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. Welcome to the Impostor Syndrome Files. My name is Kim Menninger, and as an executive coach and former high-tech leader, my personal mission is to help professionals overcome imposter syndrome so that you can advance your career with confidence. Each week, I interview a new guest who brings a powerful perspective to this conversation, including personal stories, best practices, and new insights. The more we talk about this issue, the more we destigmatize imposter syndrome, recognize that we're not alone, and empower ourselves to access the tools and resources that can help us and those around us. Thank you so much for listening and for sharing with others you think would benefit from this conversation. Welcome, John. I'm so glad that we're finally here and having this conversation. Before we jump in, I'd love to invite you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, great to be here as well. So I'm John Chilkotowsky. I'm calling here today from right near Ithaca, New York, the Finger Lakes area, upstate. And do you want me to give a little more, Kim, or just do you want we get more as we go?
Well, I'd love to hear just a little bit more about your work and kind of what your focus areas are.
Sure. Yeah, sure. So I started as a Fortune 500 consultant. I did that for about 5 years with Accenture. Moved into C-suite roles with mid-sized nonprofits for about 15 years. And now it's like the work I do is I work with leaders and teams at all levels to help them elevate communication, collaboration, and a sense of fulfillment. So to me, that can look a lot of different ways, but I'll pause there and just see where we might go next.
Yeah, so I'm really curious to hear your story of, were there particular aspects of your own career that you felt you needed to address by moving into this new world that you're in now? Like, how did you make the link between the old world and the new world?
Well, it's funny just hearing you say that. I'm like, I think I was thinking that just feels like my life, continuing to make a link between the old world and the new world. But anyway, I won't go there to that extreme. But so my work from the corporate world to going into nonprofit leadership was a huge jump. But I would say equally as big was the leap from working as a leader to then being, executive coach, strategic thought partner, whatever we want to call it. And that was really, there was a moment. So I'll do a brief story here, Kim, just to go there. So I'm at a nonprofit. I'm the COO there. We're having our best year ever. I've significantly helped the organization double in size, or pretty close to double in size. And I'm feeling pretty good about things. So that's the setup. I'm driving in. I feel uncomfortable. I pull over to the side of the road. I think I might be having a heart attack. I'm not. I'm having a panic attack. But to me, in the moment, the two they're the same thing. I've never had any experience with either, but I'm uncomfortable and something's off. And so basically, I tried to keep working. I couldn't. I'd be in a meeting room and someone would close the door and all of a sudden I'd have claustrophobia. And all I could focus on was like, I could hear my heartbeat, right? It was just like, and so my anxiety was so high that I couldn't work. I was questioning in that moment, things went through my head. I've had two young daughters in the moment when this happened. And one was like, is my nervous system just not built for this level of leadership, right? Like that was what went through my head. Can I not do this? Do I need to So I need to downgrade and take like a literally boring office job. I don't mean I mean, right? Like something that's just boring and I can clock in and clock out and it's not no stress really. And somewhere at this point, a mentor came to me and said, John, would you like to work with a coach? We've had a lot of great results in the past, especially around stress. And I said, yeah, that'd be great. So this was 2010, Kim. So coaching was out there, but it definitely wasn't known as much in the nonprofit world. I'll say that. And I said, oh, that sounds great. I had no idea. I had no idea what it was. I had no idea what I was getting myself in for, but I knew I was suffering, right? I knew I was in trouble and I needed help somehow, which was hard enough to admit. But then started to work with the coach, was back to work in a couple of weeks. It was pretty dramatic. After a couple of months, I would say I was better than ever. But the better than ever came by going sort of down into these things that I didn't know were there, these real blind spots around how I was not taking care of myself in certain ways, how I was not taking care of relationships in certain ways, how things I was doing was creating this, rot, if you will, in the foundation of the organization, whereas outwardly everything looked awesome. So that was pretty humbling, to say the least. But then coming out of that, the questions after that were, what's next? That was coming from my coach, and I couldn't answer that either. But ultimately I said, wow, this was magic. I would love to help other leaders who, are feeling on the ropes somehow, if you will, not sure how they can go forward or if they can go forward or in what way. It doesn't have to be that extreme, but that's sort of how I came from there to here in a bit. So
that's such a powerful story. And I'm curious I'm just trying to think of how to ask this question, because it sounds like when you talked about going deep into some of these issues that maybe you weren't examining, what would you advise other people to think about? Is there a way to recognize, if someone's listening, that they're in the same kind of a situation, that they might be primed for the kind of support that you were able to take advantage of? Like, maybe short of having a panic attack on the side of the road, right? Which I think is a really great sort of symbolic image of what you were experiencing. But how do people know, like, there's a rot in the foundation?
I think about it. I mean, I have thought about this a lot for myself, what would I have done if the coach wasn't there? What would I have done if the mentor wasn't there in the moment? I think I don't want to be cliched in any way about this. I think when I've been in that place, and I think a lot of times when I work with others who were in that place, there is a sense either of stuckness, of just like, I am trying everything I can, and I'm actually just getting exhausting. It's like the dream where you're trying to run away, but all of a sudden, like, you're running through molasses, or your feet are 200 feet long, like you just can't. But you're giving all you can. Like, so there's something to that. And by the way, I understand that, anxiety and panic and those things could be something handled with a therapist. It doesn't have to be a coach by any means, or it could help from both. But and then the other side of it, besides that stuckness, is this, like, I want to get off the Ferris wheel, or I want to get off, like, things are moving so fast that there doesn't seem to be this opportunity for reflection. It doesn't seem to be, it's just too much. So I think they're both linked. I think people could experience, and I have experienced both sometimes, but it's this, things are moving so fast that I have no idea where I'm going next. It's like my day, I'm just being propelled from the time I get out of bed, it's like a spring, right? It's just like, boom, and the day happens, and then I just kind of collapse. So I think either of those are ones that I associate, both for myself, but also in talking with people. They have some sense of those. And I also just want to say, in the world right now, just with all the layoffs that are happening, at the time we're speaking now, and on the heels of the pandemic, or the heels on the pandemic of different places, depending on where you live, I feel like these situations are happening more and more. And so that's where I sense like people sense like something's off and I need help. I might not know the help I need, but I need help of some kind. And what I frequently find, and this was true for me, I didn't have a strong core of mentors in the moment that I felt comfortable reaching out to. I had work relations, but not outside of that. And I think that's what made it hard for me to acknowledge it until I was, not able to work and in a panic attack. So how's that, Kim? Is that?
Yeah, well, you're making me think about this in multiple ways, because what you're describing is obviously unique to your situation, but very familiar. And I've talked to people from so many different backgrounds at so many different levels that are all feeling some variation of what you're describing. And it just makes me think about, and I think about this a lot, of just how broken the system is, right? That it's really not a sustainable system for humans. And you were in the nonprofit space. A lot of the people I talk to are in, traditional corporate environments. It's not working for anyone. I don't really know anybody who's thriving. Right? Everybody's doing what they need to do. And, they may have some indicators of success, whether that's getting promoted, getting a raise, whatever the case may be. But it's hard to find people who say, yes, this is how I want to be spending my life right now.
Hmm. Yeah, I stated up front, part of what I think I bring as a strength is this sense of fulfillment, of recognizing for myself when it's there and when it's not, taking action to get there and helping others do that as well. And I know I've seen, you've said about, to being able to be human at work, right? Mm. I think that's we're right in line there, Kim, with that, is especially on the corporate side, but really even on the nonprofit leader side, well, I was just reading now, CEOs, I think even in corporate, the average tenure is less than 7 years now. That's average. And I know it's been about 5 in nonprofit for a long time. So there's a similarity there of, if leaders aren't able to operate at that highest role for more than 5-6 years, it's like there is something wrong. So that sense of fulfillment, I find it starts with self-care or putting ourselves first. That's the thing to me, when I had a panic attack and I literally couldn't work, it became so clear very quickly that, whether my nervous system, was meant for that or not, it was like, I had to do something. No one else could do it for me. Even if I had all the coaches and therapists in the world, it was like, I had to do something to shift how I was relating with the world, and for me, that meant a lot of slowing down, a lot of reflection, things that I wasn't spending time on as a newer parent and a, high performing, high value creating leader. And I think today it's like my sense of fulfillment when I look back at that was really coming from, not only can I be this great leader by slowing down, I think it's required. I think as the speed picks up, as we're moving faster and faster, as the environment is changing around us faster and faster, I think it requires more slowdown and reflection, not just to operate, but if we want to keep operating at higher levels. That's my take on it.
And what would you say to people who are listening, who are thinking, that's just not an option for me, right? I think people who believe it's not possible because their team isn't slowing down and their boss isn't slowing down and they're going to be left behind in some way, that they're not going to be able to keep up and they're going to be seen as less committed or a lower performer?
Well, I know you work a lot with women's leadership, different ways of looking at women's leadership, and so I want to be sensitive in my answer to this. But I believe it for everyone that there is this. Well, one, I believe that rest is a critical component of high performance. Mm. Period. Right? We all know if we don't get, we all. I mean, I deny it. That I need as much sleep as other humans, but it's true, right? So to the extent that I am getting the sleep I need, I'm able to function at a higher level. To the extent that I'm able to pause and reflect about myself, about my team, about what's going on in the organization, in the world, is essential. So what would I say? I guess it's if you're not doing that now, how about a little experiment? That's how I sort of got into it, was recognizing and being willing and working with my coach was, how about an experiment? How about doing this? How about doing that? And that made it it was easier for me to try new things in that world of experimentation, of a growth mindset that I thought, and I think all of us do, oh, I've got a growth mindset, right? And then we start to realize it's not an on-off switch, that there's all these different layers and intensities and continuums of places that we don't look. And I think only when we're able to pause and reflect, in whatever that looks like, it could be going for a walk, it could be yoga, it could be a lot of things. But without that, I think about I said Ferris wheel, but even like merry-go-round, like that sense of there's someone standing and you can see their face and they're a friend, but you're going so fast that it's just this uncomfortable dreamlike blur. And to me, it's like, that's, especially now, I think that image, that perception that I can't slow down because I'll lose something, is actually sending us more quickly to lose something.
Yes.
So that's my sense of it. I don't know if that's convincing to anyone listening, but that's been my sense of it.
I think that's such a good way to put it. It's sort of accelerating the inevitable, right? Because as much as, like you said, we want to believe that we don't require as much sleep as other people, we can multitask better than anybody else. There's all kinds of stories we tell ourselves to justify this type of behavior, but eventually it catches up to us, and it catches up to us either in the form of burnout or panic attacks, or even just, you make a mistake because you're operating on fumes, right? And you just don't have the brain power available, and that can derail your efforts. And so I think that a big challenge and a big opportunity is to really reframe how we think about self-care, and really try to understand that self-care is not selfish. Self-care is not, I'll get to it when I get to it, right? Which the time never comes. That is an investment in myself so that I can do my best work.
Absolutely. And you just hit on that selfish and self-care part. I think that so many times, for myself and for others, there's this sense of, well, if I'm doing that for me, then I'm giving less to others. And I think that's the twist for me that I really needed to shift at some point, was, if I'm getting more sleep, then somewhere I'm taking away that time from someone else, or if I'm going and doing my workout, oh, how could I be so selfish? I'm not. But it's exactly that flip in there of, no, when I do that within reason, okay, we're not talking about 5 hours, but when I do that thing, I am recharging my batteries to the extent that I'm now going to be that much more present and available for everyone in my life. So it is this sort of twist in there. And then leadership presence was the other part that was just coming in when you said about, um, you had made a comment in there, Kim. Sorry, I'm forgetting the exact words, but I was just thinking also how this overlaps so much when people say, yeah, I want more confidence in the way I present myself, in the way I'm speaking, in the way I'm being passed over for promotion because they're saying I'm not confident, you know. And again, it's like, well, where in your day do you have that moment of, I am completely here right now?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean it mystically. I mean, just literally, when I'm not thinking about, oh my gosh, what could happen if this doesn't work out? And oh my gosh, that thing I did earlier and I really screwed up. It's like, when am I right here able to listen to others and be like, I not only sense what you're saying, but I can feel the emotional impact of what's going on for you.
Yeah.
And I'm not just thinking about what I'm going to say next.
Yeah.
That quality, again, whether it's men, women, it doesn't matter. It's like that quality, I believe, comes from what you said, making that investment in ourselves. And again, whatever that looks like, but making that investment in ourselves builds that confidence, or I would also say compassion is the other word I'd bring in. It's this sense of, I'm a human and I need nurturing of some kind. And to the extent I deny that is, I believe, the extent I deny it for others who I really want to be of service to.
Well, and that's such a great way to put it too, because I'm also thinking about what responsibility do we have to each other in these environments? And I'm curious to hear your perspective on this, having mentioned that you were at the C level, right? So you're a COO, you're driving yourself into the ground, and in your mind, and I think this is true for so many, right? Whether you're a parent or you're a manager, you're thinking, I have to take care of other people first. And that's the justification for not taking care of yourself. But at the same time, what you're sending is a very powerful message that this is what success looks like to everybody else in the organization, and that it's not okay for them to go take an hour out of their day to have a workout, or for them to not respond to emails at midnight either, because they're watching you. And so, as much as we think, to your point, that like the extra hour that I'm sleeping is time spent away from somebody that I should be taking care of, it's also reinforcing a message that we don't value taking care of yourself, that we value doing whatever it takes to get the work done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The do what I say, not what I do.
Yes.
Right. I mean, it's incongruous is a word that I definitely comes up in the work that I do. And it's like, okay, well, when was the last time you took vacation? Well, our company has an unlimited vacation policy. Okay, so when was the last time you took vacation? Yeah, it's been like 4 or 5 months. Okay. How about the people on your team? What's your perspective on what do you tell them? Oh, they should take, they come to me and they, oh, you should definitely take it. And I said, okay, so to your point, like what message do you think that gives them as far as what being a successful leader is? Does it mean letting everybody else go, but you never have to because you're not actually human? You're a Marvel superhero, like what are you, and so it's in that, I mean, I'm talking about myself in here as well, just to be clear, it's like, what are you telling yourself about taking time away? What are you telling yourself and what are you telling others? And what's the difference in here? And what's going to result from that? Okay, those 5 leaders on your team who keep taking vacation, what do they believe about the opportunity for promotion if they keep taking vacation like a human would? Anyway, so I'd say there's so much in there, Kim. I know that for me, sleep, I'll just go back to that, but it's related to me. It's like sleep so often is, oh, I just want to read my book, right? But it's time, it should be time to turn out the light and go to bed for me to get the sleep I need. And so I've watched, these, what am I telling myself? On the one hand, it's like, John, you deserve this time. That's a powerful message. You deserve this. You've had a busy day. You've been serving others. You deserve this. And then on the other hand, it's like, well, but you deserve to be rested in the morning. That's the way in which you're going to be able to enjoy your day, have the most feeling of fulfillment, and be able to serve all those people at a higher level. If you're exhausted, what are you going to do? So it's sort of, I've talked about this sort of like, angel and devil on my shoulders in a sense, like, and I'll admit, like, sometimes I just hear it and I smile and I'm like, I'm not sure how to navigate this, but someone helped me out with it. Like that one in particular, somebody said, well, so how much sleep do you want to get? I'm like, yeah, 7-8 hours, somewhere in there. Okay. And I said, but I rebel against the notion that I have to get 7 or 8. I rebel against that. And they're like, okay, well, how do you want to feel in the morning? I want to feel rested. Okay, well, what's going to have you feeling rested? And there's something about like being told by an expert you need 7 or 8 hours, even if that expert is me, right? And then there's something about, how do I want to feel? How do I actually want to experience my day? That for me, how do I want others to experience me?
Mm.
How do I want to show up for others? And what's it like when I don't get the sleep I need? Everybody knows at some level. I think we just, what is it? Denial ain't just a river in Egypt,
Right. Right. No, that's really true. And I wonder, as I'm hearing you talk to, do you think, and you can probably speak from personal experience as well as just from what you're seeing out there in the world and as you're talking with clients, like, do you think it's possible for an individual to affect change in the system today? Like, would you be able to do the job that you were doing as COO with this new mindset and this new way of operating? Or was the environment too fixed to allow for people to take more control of their own relationship to their work? And I'm sure that's dependent on environment, but I just wonder, for people thinking like, nope, that wouldn't fly here, how much personal influence do we have when we feel like the environment is stuck in this old way of thinking about things?
A lot of thoughts on that one for sure. Well, so when you asked me the first part of that, I instantly, I was like, yes, change has to start with an individual, right? So I would say there's always that opportunity. There was something I was exposed to recently, and they was talking about the formula of survival for organizations, which is learning is equal to or greater than the rate of environmental change. So they wrote it out as like, L greater than or equal to EC. And so that was the other thing that came up here for me in your question was, I think I won't say if, but when we engage in this sort of quest for change of the system or whatever it might be, it has to start with us. And it has to be this commitment. I've heard it laid out as, there's a project we engage in, and then there's a curriculum that we engage in. So if I say, I want to change this aspect of the organization, let's just say, and it's something meaningful to me, right? It's not something I feel I can currently do. There is an equal and required curriculum learning for me. I need to learn and change and be different in order to make that thing happen. And I believe that like the act of leadership is that commitment to, putting this stake in the ground and saying, I really want this change. I mean, it could be, I want this sales quota, but I'm saying, it's something meaningful that we can't do right now. And so when we embark on that, whether we acknowledge it or not, there is something in us saying, I'm going to need to change. That's scary, but also exciting, right? And there's something about that. Somebody said, Anxiety is excitement without the breath, right? So, I think about that, right? So I think when somebody says, I want to enact change here somehow, there is the requirement of a commitment of how much am I willing to learn and change myself? How fast am I willing to, because it's a commitment, right? And then when we embark on that, when we change, we might see that, do you know what? I'm not sure how any amount of change in me is going to result in the change I want to see here, but I don't know that we can know that ahead of time. I think so, right? So if I say like, it's just too much, and I haven't really taken on much of any personal change, I don't have a vista. I don't have a viewpoint, in my opinion, to look at this and know. Whereas if I've put in the time and the change, and I'm like, yep, I see where I could be effective here. I think it's going to take 5 years to do what I really want. I think my time would be better spent somewhere else in a more supportive environment. So that's my sense of it, Kim.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been thinking about that a lot too, is just that natural tendency that we have to jump to the conclusion that something is not possible, or, whatever that fixed mindset is in the moment. And like we're talking about in this case of, no, it's not possible that I can take care of myself and stay successful in the environment that I'm in. But I think that's a really good point too, is, well, first of all, you don't know that yet because you haven't put in the work. But also, if you do put in the work and you get to a point where you realize, I've confirmed my hypothesis, right, that this is not going to be possible, that doesn't mean that you've failed. It just probably gives you more data about, well, maybe this isn't the right environment for me, right? That this is not the only place where I can bring my strengths and talents. Maybe I want to find a place that allows me to take care of myself and achieve my goals at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. And could I share one more thing in here, Kim?
Yeah, please do.
So, well, again, currently as we're speaking, there's like layoffs all over the place in multiple industries, right? And so whether I'm working with someone who has been laid off or is seeing every, good friends and coworkers be laid off around them, or someone in a situation where they report into, let's just say, a CEO of a prominent company, and that CEO is not going to allow the change that these people want. That conversation about what good work can I do here for the sake of my team and for the sake of myself, because just to be resilient in the face of, sort of being pulled two different ways. I think that conversation is a vital one right now, because I see a lot of people jumping to another organization because things are tough right now. And sometimes that's the right move. And sometimes it's the move just for movement's sake, and sticking it out a little longer and thinking about not the next move, but 2 moves away. So what could you do right now before you make that jump somewhere else that's going to set you up? And how is that next move setting you up for what's next? What experiences do you want in your career that you haven't had? That's just from a work side to it. But those conversations, I think, are right now so vital, with things changing so fast. Again, people feeling either like, oh my gosh, I got laid off, or wow, everybody about me got laid off. What is the organization now? Something about that just feels like really vital conversations right now.
I think you're absolutely right. And I agree with you when it comes to this idea of not leaving too prematurely. Obviously, if it's toxic, if you can barely make it through the day, that's a different story. But if you haven't developed, let's call them the boundaries, the habits, the behaviors that are going to help you to navigate your environment in a more empowered way, you're going to take those same habits and behaviors with you to wherever you go next. And now you're just going to be in an environment where you don't feel as connected. You feel that much more pressure to prove yourself. So it's unlikely you're going to achieve the goals that have brought you to that new place in the first place. So you're absolutely right. I think once you decide this is maybe not the right place for me, it's the perfect sandbox to start investing in yourself and in the sort of skills and strength that you want to bring with you wherever you go in your career. Because now the stakes aren't as high, right? Like I've already decided I'm probably going to leave here anyway. So it gives me some room for, as you said earlier, experimentation.
Yeah. And what you just said, Kim, I was just thinking of, I'm not sure if you've experienced this yet or not, but in giving some kind of, 360-degree feedback for leaders, I've heard it now coming in more where there's the opportunity to include a spouse or significant other in that feedback. So in other words, it's sponsored through the workplace, but in having these people outside the, air quotes, work environment, sometimes, and I will claim this for myself as well, sometimes being able to see how the pattern isn't just a work pattern, it's a life pattern. Sometimes when we see over in the personal side of things, outside of work, like, oh, I'm doing that there as well, and it's having an impact there as well, can be now we get traction. Now we're like, oh, I'm motivated to change. I could kind of torture myself and others a little bit at work, but I'm not willing to do that outside with the people who I'm closest with.
Yeah.
So I find so that, again, bringing that humanness to work, something about including that other voice or voices outside of work is starting to work its way in. I find that very encouraging. I think that's I think it's a step in the right direction.
I would agree. I have not seen that yet, but I think that's a great idea. It also acknowledges our wholeness as humans, right? That we're not just these workers who have this compartmentalized life outside of the work environment. And it does sort of give you a wake-up call as it relates to your overall values of, am I being the person that I want to be, not just the professional that I want to be? Yeah. Wow. This has been such a powerful conversation, John. I really appreciate it. I feel like you and I could keep going for hours. There's so much to what we're talking about. But in the interest of time, where can people find you if they want to learn more about your work?
Yeah. Easiest is my website, www.northstar-coaching.com. That's easiest.
Perfect. And then I will make sure that we link to that in the show notes along with your bio as well. But thank you so much. Any final thoughts you want to share?
It was a pleasure, Kim. This is, I'll say that this topic, sometimes the topic of, imposter syndrome or confidence, it's everywhere. And yet I feel like right now in particular, I think it's bubbling up as there's so much change, again, in the environment and organizations. And so I think it's, I don't think we're done with it. I don't think we've figured it out. I think it's a work in progress that might be even more important right now. So thank you for having me here, Kim, for the conversation.
Oh, my pleasure, John. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to the Impostor Syndrome Files. If you would like to continue this conversation in a safe and trusted space, I would love for you to join my virtual discussion group every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. For the past several years, the group has been limited to women, but it is now open, regardless of gender, to anyone who is interested in exploring and troubleshooting common workplace challenges, building better awareness of ourselves and others, and becoming more inclusive allies at work. Check out the show notes for more info on how to find us, and please join us next week for another episode of the Impostor Syndrome Files.